G'day and welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a working muso in Australia, you're going to want to grab a coffee, pull up a chair, and pay very close attention to this one. We're diving straight into a massive legislative shift that literally just hit the Aussie live music scene this month, July 2026. We are talking about your superannuation, your rights, and how the brand new payday super laws are radically changing the way venues and bands do business. Let's kick things off with a frankly staggering stat. According to a recent survey by the MEA, the Media, Entertainment, and Arts Alliance, a whopping 82% of musicians have never received a single cent of superannuation for a gig. Honestly, if you ask a room full of gigging musos if they get super, you'll usually just get a laugh, right? We all kind of tend to think super is just for folks with lanyards and 9-to-5 standing meetings, not for the four of you loading a heavy PA into the back of a hatchback at 1 a.m. You play the gig, send the invoice, split the cash, and move on. Simple. Well, not exactly.
Because here is the wild reality that most gigging musicians simply do not know. Australian law has legally entitled performers to superannuation for over 34 years. Yeah, you heard that right. This is not some new rule. Since July 1st, 1992, the Superannuation Guarantee Act has specifically named artists, musicians, and entertainers. Basically, if you were paid to play a public gig at any point in the last 3 decades, there's a massive chance you were legally owed super right on top of your fee, so you've got to wonder, why on earth has it been sitting there unpaid for so long?
Okay, let's get into Section 1, Busting the ABN Myth.
So let's unpack this and figure out why this huge gap exists in the first place. It all starts with dismantling what the music industry calls the ABN myth. See, most musicians just assume that because they invoice with an Australian business number, an ABN, and call themselves independent contractors, well, they're completely locked out of the super system. And venues, they've operated on that exact same assumption for decades. But the ATO, the Australian Taxation Office, actually views you through two completely different lenses. You can absolutely be an independent contractor for tax purposes, but still be considered an employee for superannuation purposes. The ATO's own guidance is crystal clear here. This rule can hold up even if you quote an ABN.
So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. Under the law, if your contract is principally for your labour to play a gig, the ATO classifies you as an employee for super purposes. You're not selling a physical product, right? You're selling the performance itself. Because of that, the standard 12% super guarantee should generally be sitting right on top of the labour component of your fee. And hey, this doesn't just apply to the lead singer or the guitarist. We're talking DJs, stagehands, sound engineers, lighting techs, basically anyone whose services are required for that performance to actually happen.
Right, moving on to Section 2, the catalyst, the 2026 payday shakeup.
Now, for decades, this law was really only enforced on paper. Super used to be self-reported quarterly, and it relied on this weird system where nobody was really checking up on it. But a massive government crackdown has just flipped the script for venues and musicians alike. Let's look at the timeline of exactly what changed. Under the new Treasury Laws Amendment, the Payday Superannuation Act 2025, which literally just kicked in on July 1st, 2026, those old, lazy quarterly super deadlines are dead and buried. Employers can no longer kick the can down the road. Super is now strictly due within 7 business days of your payday. Every single time a venue pays a band, boom, it triggers a rapid 7-day countdown clock to get that super straight into your nominated fund.
And honestly, this right here brilliantly illustrates the new urgency and, let's be real, the stress for venues. Just to add fuel to the fire, the free government portal that small venues used to use to pay super, the Small Business Superannuation Clearinghouse, it officially shut down on June 30, 2026. So picture a volunteer committee at a local RSL or a little suburban pub. They might have modeled through on a free government tool before, but now they have to go out, find and actually pay for commercial payroll software just to process these payments for every single musician they hire.
Because every single payday is now its own strict deadline, the risk for venues has just multiplied exponentially. Think about it. A venue booking weekly gigs now faces 50 separate chances a year to get absolutely slugged with a penalty charge by the ATO if they miss that tight 7-day window. If they pay the band on a Friday, they've got just over a week to ensure that 12% super hits each musician's account. This isn't just a tighter clock, folks. This is a completely different ballgame.
All right, on to Section 3. Who pays the band?
So, how do these strict new laws actually apply in the real world? Well, it depends entirely on who booked the band and how the contract is structured. Let's look at some specific examples from the ATO. If a pub hires a band, let's say a 3-piece rock outfit for a Friday night residency, the pub owes super to each individual member. The same goes if you're playing a corporate end-of-year party.
But what if a private couple, let's call them James and Haley, hire that exact same band for their wedding? Well, they do not owe super. That situation falls under a private domestic exemption for work under 30 hours a week. And if the band decides to incorporate and operate as their own PTYLT company, the venue doesn't owe super at all. The legal obligation moves entirely onto the band's own company. So, same band, same songs, same night's work, but 3 entirely different legal outcomes.
Wild, right?
But here is where it gets incredibly complicated for venues, and where the system, frankly, really breaks down. You see, the ATO's examples mostly assumed the venue knows exactly who is in the band and pays them all individually. But if you're in the industry, you know that's just not how it works. Usually, a band leader scores a gig, calls up a few session players, invoices the venue as themselves for one big lump sum, and then splits the cash out of the back of their car after the gig. The venue literally never has a direct financial relationship with the bass player or the drummer. And as a recent investigation by Michael West Media rightly pointed out, the ATO has not clearly addressed this exact everyday structure. When they were pressed on it, the ATO basically just restated that labels and contractual arrangements are not determinative, which is really just a fancy way of saying they've left venues completely in the dark. I mean, if a pub pays a band leader $1,000, are they suddenly liable for the super of 3 other musicians they never even met or dealt with? The law says venues cannot contract out of their super obligations, leaving pubs holding a massive potential liability for musicians whose names they don't even know.
One potential lifesaver in all this mess is the agency model. The ATO notes that when a client contracts with a company rather than an individual, the whole super dynamic shifts. If you're booked through a reputable agency, the client contracts directly with them. The agency is the one who formally engages and pays the band. And because the agency administers the payment, they take on the role of managing all those super obligations on your behalf. It seamlessly ensures you don't fall into the gap, and honestly, it completely shields the venue from a massive compliance headache.
Okay, final section. Section 4, securing your super.
The days of venues getting away with unpaid super under the radar are officially over. With the ATO cracking down and that 7-day payday clock ticking loudly, it is time for musicians to take control of their financial rights. Stop leaving your money on the table. You don't need an advanced tax degree to fix this. You just need to adopt a few simple habits. Number 1, always ask the venue or agency the super question up front. Just ask, hey, how is super handled on top of our feet? Number 2, drop that old habit of dumping all the band's super into one person's account to quote-unquote sort out later. Trust me, that is a tax nightmare waiting to happen. Ensure every single band member has their own nominated super fund details ready to hand over right then and there. And number 3, keep a meticulous paper trail of who hired you, through whom, and for what. If the ATO ever audits a venue, those records are your absolute backup.
I want to leave you with this final thought. Over a career of late-night gigs, loaded-out vans, and split fees, exactly how much of your retirement have you left on the stage? Superannuation is not some magical bonus. It is your deferred pay. It is money that you have rightfully earned through your own hard labor, legally mandated to support you when you finally decide to hang up the guitar. I mean, a working band can play hundreds of gigs over a few years, and 12% on top of all those fees, that adds up to a number that truly matters. Stop assuming the ABN means you get nothing. Understand your rights, have your fund details ready, and make sure what you've actually earned lands safely in your account. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.